Hi, everyone. I'm Leanna. I'm a quantum hypnotist and soul led travel advisor. What is a soul led travel advisor? I use the Akashic Records and astrology and astrocartography to help you decide on your next travel location. But I want to continue sharing my past lives with you because when I find hypnotists that I like to listen to, I always wonder what their past lives have been like. And sometimes that's hard to find. So today I'm just going to be telling you about one because this one I did through self hypnosis using a guided past life regression meditation. This one was specifically by This is Maria, which I'll link down below. But I don't recommend doing one on your own unless you know that like any trauma you see or experience isn't going to bother you that much because you can take that trauma with you past the meditation if you don't know how to release it. But with a professional practitioner, they'll help you release that trauma while you're hypnotized and process it afterwards if you need to. So, this one's pretty exciting to me. It's very short what I viewed. And because it's a self, I don't have a whole lot of details. But what's exciting to me is the information I got about the locations through the Akashic Records, which I'll talk about after I tell you what I saw. So, to start off with, I was using a crystal when I did this meditation. This is a Lemurian seed crystal, it's in a dodecahedron shape. And I was very intuitively guided to buy this crystal. I got it from Intervision Crystals when they were having a sale. And when I first looked at them, I was like, oh, I don't need any crystals. But when I was looking at them, I had tingles on the right side of my face and head. But still was like, I don't need any crystals. And then so I left the page, carried on with my day. While I was cleaning, I thought about the crystal again, like, oh, I wonder if like I really am supposed to get one of those crystals. And the tingles came back so strongly that I kind of had a freeze on. Like someone walked over your grave. I went like this, kind of jerked a little bit. Um, so I was like, oh, I need one of these crystals. And I bought one. Luckily, they were pretty heavily discounted at the time. And so, Lemurian seed crystals, if you look at the description, you'll see something about helping with past lives, past memories. Lemuria is an ancient civilization, or the ancient civilization of Mu, you'll also hear it called, that was believed to be in Hawaii. Um, Pretty advanced spiritually, uh, but it was destroyed at some point, most likely by conflict with Atlantis, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And so when I got the crystal, a Lemurian seed crystal named after Lemuria Mu, I pretty much expected if I used it during past life regression that I was going to see a life in Atlantis or Lemuria. Um, Atlantis and a lot of other ancient civilizations use crystals to store memories and information and data, as well as lots of other everyday things. So that's what I expected. I do not think that was the reason I got the crystal. I think it was to see another past life that I saw immediately after, or past life or metaphorical scene, depending on what you, how you think about it. When I tell you about it, you'll understand why I say that. Um, I think it was to see another past life connected to Egypt, which you could also say it has to do with Atlantis because Egypt, many people believe, some people believe that Egypt was a colony or place that survivors of Atlantis settled. So, yeah, you can look at it however you want. So, when I was doing this guided meditation, like I said, it's very short. You don't have someone asking you for more information. You can pause the meditation if you kind of want to stay in in it for a while. I was using my phone to listen to it, so that was kind of hard to do while I was in a meditative state. And so, what I saw, the first scene I saw, I was a woman with long dark hair, wearing a white dress in a very beautiful place, just kind of out walking around and observing where I was. It, like I said, very beautiful. It felt like there was a lot of vegetation around and water around, and the pathways and structures were kind of built around nature, and there was a lot of white stone. Um, the vegetation felt tropical to me, um, and I know that I felt like I was respected or somewhat held in regard, and that I was not from the place that I was viewing. And I had sort of a knowing in the first scene that it was Atlantis, but wasn't quite sure. The next scene that I saw, I'm in sort of a courtroom or official building space. It's kind of what's inspired the cover photo if you looked at that, although it's not exactly right. Still a lot of white, a lot of white stone, a lot of white clothing. Um, there was like a counter height or tall kind of desk that was in a semicircle. Kind of had like a forum feel, like a Greek forum feel. Um, and old men behind this desk, like several of them. I don't really know how many, but I would say 7 or 8, maybe more than that. And I'm in the center of the semicircle on the other side of the desk, standing very, very angry. Just imagine a person in a courtroom kind of flapping around, very angry and yelling, and telling them how unethical they are, like, you can't do this, you, it's not fair, like, eventually saying, like, you guys are monsters. And so what I was doing was speaking out against Lemuria testing on children, um, which you can find information about this in other work on hypnosis, like other hypnosis findings from Atlantis, such as Dolores Cannon or Sarah Russman Cosme. I, at the time, didn't know a whole lot about Atlantis when I saw this life. But I know that they were testing on children when I saw this, and they were exiling them. And I thought that was wrong. I was very angry and upset about it and decided to speak up against it. Um, I have a feeling it wasn't the first time that it kind of escalated to this point where I was like screaming and yelling at people. This council did not like that. So what they did was they exiled me with the children. So I did see like a scene kind of me being kind of escorted away to be exiled, and then being exiled, the last scene in a desert landscape, very dry, very hot, with the children. Sort of saw like a blimp of me kind of caring for the children before I died. Most of us died in exile from exposure, dehydration, and starvation. I remember feeling really dried out, almost desiccated. So, yeah, that's a past life I saw. Very short. Would love to get more details, which my guides did say like they could show me more of it if I wanted to see it, but that I didn't need to see more of it. Um, so when I'm telling you about these past lives, I also go into the Akashic Records, my Akashic Records, to see if I can get anything else that's useful to share. What I got was very short, but I can share with you. It was mainly that, let me find it. I was an ambassador of Lemuria in Atlantis after Atlantis had destroyed, colonized, or whatever happened to Lemuria. And I was liked. Um, I fit in well, so they allowed me to stay. I was liked and respected, so they allowed me to live there and stay in Atlantis, even though they had this conflict with Lemuria, where where Atlantis was the bullies, pretty much, is what you need to know. And I did not like the testing on children. Specifically, what they were testing, I'm not quite sure. I should have asked about that, but I didn't. It feels like they were doing genetic testing to me. I've heard of vaccine testing on children in Atlantis when there was some kind of virus in Atlantis, but this feels like genetic modification in some way that didn't quite go like they thought. So when it messed up and damaged these children, they exiled them, is what it feels like. So I did not like the tested, and I protested against it and was exiled with the children, pretty much what I saw. And then a nice little comforting thing, the Akashic Records is pretty nice to me. You need to know that you fought with the children and cared for them before you died. So that's kind of where I think like I had protested in other ways before I had gotten so angry and more extreme with my protests. And then because I like to look at my astrocartography map to see if there's any patterns, which I don't know yet, I'll know when I finish these, if there's any patterns in the astrocartography map with the past lives that I view, I ask about the locations, which is, to me, this is the most interesting part. So Lemuria, like I mentioned before, believed to be in Hawaii, around Hawaii. And that's what I got from the Akashic Record. So no surprise there. For Atlantis, this is the surprising part. Atlantis and where I was exiled are what blew my mind. So for Atlantis, I believe Atlantis was in multiple locations, that it was kind of an empire, or had multiple regions, kingdoms. I believe it was an empire, though. So for Atlantis, where I was in that past life, they said it would be, this is how they said it would be the coast of Ivory. So Cote d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast. That's interesting. Don't know if anyone else has gotten that information before. If you know, leave a comment. And then where I was exiled, even more interesting. I expected it to be an island kind of nearby or somewhere, or the desert maybe somewhere in Africa. It was not on the same continent. It was the Mojave Desert is where I was exiled. So put a map up so you can see if you can see where the Ivory Coast is. It's in the west coast of Africa. And the Mojave Desert is in California. Now, there's a whole lot of theories out there about California, but I'm just going to disregard those and assume that California has always been part of North America. I do assume that there's been some land shifts and moving of the continent since the time of Atlantis, which is believed to be 12 to 15,000 years ago. But it shouldn't be, if what we know about geology, it shouldn't be too extreme of shifts. But I do believe there has been natural land shifts, natural disasters and tectonic shifts that have changed the land and the exact location of it. However, I still think that the Mojave Desert, any which way you put it, would be very far away. So I asked, how did I get there? It's so far away. How did I get there? Did I take a boat? That would take forever. And the answer was through the ley lines, which I know now that's not that surprising. I've always kind of been intrigued by ley lines. So, ley lines, the common definition is the energetic lines that are formed on the earth from sacred sites um, and landmarks. There's a few different models about where those would be, but I think also like geographical structures and land would also form these energetic fields, lines. Um, there has been some things that came out through hypnosis, I think mostly through Sarah Bressman Cosme's work about using ley lines to travel through as sort of like a portal or gateway to another location or teleporting kind of deal. So that might be what I did. Let's talk a little bit about. I wanted to go into a little bit of ancient history that you can find online just to compare. So I'll link some videos below. I watched these just before making this video, so I'm not an expert or anything like that. I just wanted to see if anything lined up. And so there's a website called visitingatlantis.com where you can see some interpretations of what Plato wrote about Atlantis and kind of comparing it to, it's mostly comparing it to Mauritania, which is also in the west coast of Africa, not that far from the Ivory Coast, and specifically to a structure called the Risha structure. I'm going to put a few videos below of two people who are talking about, their theories about the locations of Atlantis in case you want to see, and specifically the structure. The Risha structure is a circular structure. It kind of looks to me, it looks very similar to what you see of an eye of a hurricane when you're seeing an image of that, kind of a circular pattern of that in the mountains of Mauritania. Apparently, it matches up with some geographical descriptions that Plato included in his writing, the rock structures and the animals that he found or believed to be in Atlantis. So that's one theory. And I was like, that's pretty close to Ivory Coast. So if they're right, it's possible that Ivory Coast was also included in Atlantis. There has been some similar colonies, land disputes, leadership in the west coast of Africa and Mauritania and Ivory Coast in more modern history. So it's not too far fetched. However, I wanted to ask the Akashic Records what they think. So I'm very much, my specialty in the Akashic Records is very much location, um, geography, and place. And getting the information of place, I can get other information as well, but that is where I'm most connected in the Akashic Records. So I just wanted to see what I could get. I did have the idea of, oh, well, why don't I just access the whole Akashic Records for all of Atlantis? And my intuition in my head very sternly said, or my higher self very sternly said, no. Um, so I take that to mean either the world's not ready for it yet, or they want people to figure it out on their own, because a lot of people are releasing a lot of trauma and healing from the time of Atlantis. So they don't want me to come in and ruin it and tell you everything I would maybe learn from the Akashic Records of Atlantis. And I'm curious too if anyone has ever done that before. If they have, I would probably be skeptical about the information, but would be interested to know what happened. So I opened the Akashic Records for the Rishar, how do you spell it? Yeah, Risha structure, and uh, its energy voice that it spoke to me in was very interesting. It was very old, very masculine, and deep. So it felt like an old, wise wizard. This is how I describe it. And so I was asking if the Rishash structure is associated with the capital of Atlantis. And what I got may surprise you because the answer was no. And I expected it to be like, well, maybe a little bit loosely. So, no, the Rishash structure is not associated with the capital Atlantis. It was formed through a series of energetic disturbances. And then I asked if the disturbances were just to this land, and it said no, to the whole of Earth. I had, while I was doing that, I had gotten suspicions about what could cause it. And so I asked, were the disturbances from above, meaning our atmosphere in the sky, or below, meaning within the Earth, such as plate shifts or structures under the Earth, causing energetic disturbances? And what I received were they were from both. And then I asked if there's anything else they could tell me, Akashic Records could tell me about these energetic disturbances. And what I got was no, not at this time. But we can see that you understand much and your assumptions are correct, but not complete. And then I asked if they would advise me not to share my assumptions. And the answer to that was yes, we advise you not to share. So can't share my assumptions. Sorry, guys. There are a lot of things that in the Akashic records that are there that we're not ready to access yet. And I believe that a lot of information about ancient civilizations, ancient histories, some of the theories may be correct or part of one narrative, but are not complete. And I believe they can't be complete yet for various reasons. And so when I was looking up Ivory Coast, I'm going to put up the interpretation of the structure of the capital Atlantis skin. You see the circle again. You also see similar circles and crop circles. I'm not going to talk about that today, but I am going to talk about this basilica that I came across when I was loosely looking up the Ivory Coast for more information about that and its history. Just because the shape, circular shapes, not uncommon at all. It's very common in architecture, especially landmarks and religious sites. Symbols, circles have a lot of symbology, a lot of meaning, and a lot of energy as well. A lot of sacred energy. So it's not unusual. I was just like, oh, this is very interesting that I saw such strong similarities. To me, you may not see them, between the interpretation of the capital of Atlantis and the construction of this basilica and the grounds and layout of the landscaping. And I was just like, I didn't expect to find anything, but I was like, let's just ask and see because people can unknowingly tap into different energy when they're building new structures. So I was like, let's just ask, let's just see. And I did not expect to get the answer that I got, but it's very exciting. So I opened the records for the Basilica of Our Lady of Peace in the Ivory Coast. It's a little bit inland, but very close to the coast. So I was asking if there is a connection in the construction of this basilica with the capital of Atlantis, and I'll just read what I got. So I got, yes, there is a connection. And then they called me smart. But the basilica was built to mirror the energetic blueprint of the capital of Atlantis. This was done by unconsciously tapping into the energetic blueprint of the capital of Atlantis. And then I asked if this basilica is the location or connected to the location of the capital of Atlantis, or and it said yes, it was, although not the exact location. So I take that to mean somewhere nearby, potentially in the Ivory Coast, or potentially in land that is not visible at this time. And then I asked about the geometry, the sacred geometry that was included in the design of the grounds. And it says it was unconscious and thought to be mainly for aesthetics. Um, and then I wrote something I can't read. the my handwriting. Um, I also asked if the basilica mirroring the energetic blueprint of the capital of Atlantis benefits the basilica in any way. And it said, yes, there's benefit. It keeps the frequency of the basilica in a higher state. It is about the flow of energy between the shapes, between the circles. It creates its own field, its own dimension. And then I asked if the land, if we can still find the land where the capital of Atlantis existed, like it's not underground or underwater or somewhere. And they said, yeah, but the land is incomplete. So I'm assuming that part of it is not um, accessible at this time. So that's the information I got from the Akashic Records. Is, according to the Akashic Records, is the capital of Atlantis in the Ivory Coast or nearby? I think it's a very strong yes. So, did I discover the location of the capital of Atlantis? Maybe on accident. I don't know. um, but like I said, I think that Atlantis was located in many different places around the world at the time. Maybe there was more than one capital. And so now I just want to talk a little bit about what I found in my astrocartography map, specifically to these locations from this past life. So it's from Lemuria, which said to look at Hawaii for my astrocartography map. So remember, I was a woman, an ambassador of Lemuria, so that would be respect, recognition, um, sharing opinion, speaking out kind of thing. So I was surprised to see that the lines kind of match what I think would be needed for becoming an ambassador. I had my Mars midheaven line. So for women, that can be kind of a struggling line, but it just depends on, your own chart and your own personality. Um, Mars midheaven is very masculine energy. It can be aggressive or quick to anger, but it can also be ambition and fighting to be recognized, um, which to me goes along with someone who would want to become an ambassador. And then I also had Venus in Zenith on the latitude, um, which, Venus, creativity, love, all that. But Venus in Zenith also means like prioritizing social acceptance, um, and gaining that social acceptance, as well as being really focused on your physical appearance. Again, I think that could go along with being an ambassador. I also had Jupiter and Venus Paran. So in astrocartography, a Paran is the planetary lines from planetary lines when they intersect creates a latitude line that creates a unique combination of the energy in that place. They don't have as much of uh, and influence in terms of mileage and range of influence. So Jupiter and Venus climbing the social ladder, you guys, also needed for an ambassador, and being comfortable expressing your thoughts and opinions, which I have to imagine an ambassador needs to do, needs to be. Now, in the Ivory Coast, where I was living as an ambassador in Atlantis, my lines, I think, also go along with sort of initially that being well respected and accepted, because I had my Uranus ascendant, which, um, you know, could be changing your appearance to be more individualized, unpredictable, and radical. And I think I got to that point of unpredictability and radicalness by the end there. And it can be a lot of change as well. Now I have a moon and Pluto Paran. So that's combining some of those two energies. I did have a moon and Pluto Paran in Brazil for my last past life. I don't remember if I talked about it because it wasn't one of the strongest ones. And I had a few Paran. So I was just trying to talk about the ones I thought were the most important. So I think that's interesting. I had my moon and Pluto line is there as well. So it wasn't super important to talk about the Paran. So to me, moon is one of the planets, one of the placements that can signify past life. There's quite a few in astrocartography. And then Pluto, all about change, transformation. Having a moon and Pluto crossing can bring up a lot of the denser emotions like sadness and depression, um, disappointment, but it can also bring up repressed memories and past wounds in order to release and transform them. And now, I don't know, but I have a feeling that if I was to travel to the Ivory Coast, which would be great, that bringing up and releasing past wounds, maybe from this lifetime, could be something that's activated and experienced. Would I consciously know that it was from this lifetime? Maybe not. I mean, I probably would. Would someone else? Maybe not. Um, yeah, and then the next location would be the Mojave Desert in California. Obviously, I don't know exactly where in the Mojave Desert I would have been exiled to. So I just looked at the Devil's Playground because if you're going to be exiled and die, that sounds like a good place to do it. So I had Parans there. I don't have any planetary lines there. So I had a Mars Saturn line, you guys. So that is a lot of resistance, struggle, bringing out aggression. Um, if you have worked on yourself a lot and have a lot of endurance and patience, you can focus on these issues and overcome them. So you'd kind of get to the root of the problem. And then I have my moon and Mercury line, Paran, and a moon and Jupiter Paran, which I was kind of surprised to see both of those there. Of course, I don't know exactly what I'm going to find. I'll figure that out once I've done all these. So moon and Mercury, to me, what came up when I saw that was motherly communication and motherly care and affection, through communication through body language. So moon and Mercury is all about intuitive communication, and being in touch with your emotions, maybe a little bit of emotional intelligence. And then moon and Jupiter Paran is a very pleasant place to build a home, have children, and create a family. So I was a bit confused to see those because obviously it's exiled. I don't expect it to be pleasant most of the time. So I kind of tuned in to my higher self a little bit. And what I heard was, you tried really hard to make it a safe place for the children, like as best I could. Obviously, we didn't have many resources, so wasn't a good time. Yeah, so that's my video on Atlantis. I do have another. Well, technically, I have three, but the third one is just like a blimp, where I know that had to do with Atlantis, but I wasn't really there. But so I have another Atlantis past life experience that is with a professional hypnotist that I'm going to share next, probably pretty soon. So keep a watch out for that. And the locations for that are different. So when I do the astrocartography part, it is a different location. The experience is very different from this one. So I hope you check that one out. And if you're interested in exploring your own past lives, getting to know your soul, or clearing your energetic body, I am a Soul Center Healing Hypnosis practitioner, which is a quantum hypnosis technique that prioritizes clearing your energetic body and releasing blockages, as well as rebuilding your energetic body, which is a little bit different than some other quantum hypnosis techniques, before going into past lives and asking your higher self whatever you want to know. And then I provide travel plans based off of astrology and astrocartography, as well as the Akashic Records, about where you need to travel to either connect with the earth and activate energies that you need for the next part of your journey. So you can check out my website. I'll put some links down below for further information about Atlantis and guided hypnosis for past life regression. So feel free to share, like, and subscribe. Thanks.